This morning, I should say, is Ritu Chakraborty, the co-founder and EVP of TeamLease Services Limited. And our webinar today is also sponsored by one of their companies, Freshers World. My name is Stuart Creek. I'm a marketing manager here at Simply Learn. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody of how the WebEx controls work. For questions that will get answered by Ritu at the end of the presentation, put them in the Q&A box, please. And that way we can queue them up for her. If you do put information in the chat, please address it to all panelists so that both I and she can see that. And the first thing we're going to do is a poll. We'll be doing a few of these during the presentation. Oops, sorry. And give me a moment to get it started. All right. This poll has two questions. And if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn Live, go ahead and put your answers in the comments. For the rest of you, you should see the WebEx polling widget. And the first question is, what's your level of experience? And the second question is one that we've been asking since the start of the pandemic, about how you're doing personally at this time. Know that things are not going well in general in India right now, but we hope that you personally are doing all right, staying safe and well. And we have about 10 seconds left on this poll. And we'll close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let me share the results. And we have a pretty experienced audience. It's a bimodal distribution, but about half of people have 5 or more years experience. And then there's about a third who are still at college or university. And I'm glad to see that most everybody is doing at least okay or better than that. And for the people who are not, we hope that the information in the webinar will help lighten your mood a little bit. So let me close this poll and introduce our guest of honor. Rita Chakraborty is the co-founder and EVP of TeamLease Services. She has 21 and more years of experience in the industry, and she has been instrumental in making TeamLease India's largest people supply chain company. She has a number of honors, including winning the Telstra Business Woman in Asia Award. And she has her economics undergraduate degree from Banaras Hindu University and her MBA from Goa Institute of Management. So welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Rita.
Thank you.
And I'm going to stop sharing these slides so that we can have a conversation. There we go. So if I could start with a question, what is different about the world of work today than it was before the pandemic hit?
First and foremost, thank you so much for having me in this interesting event that you've lined up. I hope everybody's staying safe and doing well. Okay, so I think COVID, I believe, has not created so many new trends as it has amplified existing ones. And I think few aspects of COVID, which has probably become very apparent and visible across the world, is that two things. I mean, very simply put, is one is the impact of digital tools, technologies, at workplaces and in our daily lives, as well as the way we are, as well as the way we learn. I think these are the two things where I personally have seen that the maximum amplification has happened. And I think if it's important for us, honestly, to jump into these two aspects as early as we can. Otherwise, we will definitely get left out in terms of the direction that workplaces, organizations, enterprise structures, job roles are about to take, or probably has already transformed into. So I think from my perspective, of course, there is, a question as open-ended as this can have extremely broad response, like starting from how education has changed, how healthcare systems are changing, how individual consumption patterns are changing, how traditional consumption models are probably going to be changed forever, how real estate is changing. But I'm not delving into all of those aspects. But given the context of today's discussions, I think the two things which have got amplified thanks to the pandemic are digital technologies and its impact on our lives and learning. Just to answer as briefly as I can on that point.
Yeah. As an aside, early in the pandemic, I was watching a webinar from a company, actually an investment firm that was talking about different companies that they had in their portfolio. And one of the executives said, if someone had come to us and said, we need to shift all of our workers to work from home, we would have said to management, that's going to take 6 months and it will cost $10 million. And then we got the word, we all have to work from home tomorrow. And within 3 days and a no budget, everybody was working from home. So yeah, your point about amplifying trends and the idea that digital transformation was a popular topic in 2019, but it became vitally essential in 2020 is a very germane one. How do you see change in both the digital nature of our lives and our work, as well as learning as a priority and as a methodology in 2021? How do you see that being different going into the future?
Let me walk into responding to that question after I probably share a few comments on why I particularly stayed away from making any comment around the work from home thing, which has been much talked about, right, Stuart? I think it's very important that why did I specifically stayed away? Why? Because I think in India, I think these are contexts, of course, that I can share from India, that we have seen a roller coaster ride when it comes to this whole work from home concept. And let me explain why. And I think it's very important to understand this before I respond to the question that you asked right now. We went from, as you rightly pointed out, and I think I did some research around the same time last year, and I found out that even if I consider the most advanced technology companies globally, before walking into the pandemic, not more than 20% of the workforce, global workforce, was working from home. And this is specifically to the technology companies that we're talking about. I'm not considering any other industries in this statistic. So if even the most advanced technology companies were actually, with all the tools available at their hand, was working at 20%, and how do you then manage this shift? Of course, we saw the world reacting to the pandemic, and a lot of organizations were able to make a switch like we did. Like ours is a services company, and it was absolutely an unthinkable concept. I mean, how do you manage your employees? How do you get them to become productive if they're going to not be in front of you? I think these were obvious questions every leader probably were struggling with, but we managed to do it, right, as in reaction, and I think successfully so. And I think there were some extremely bold statements made by many industry leaders and tech giants saying that 75%, 80%, 90% of our workforce will be work from home for the next 3 years and stuff like that. And maybe we will never go back to home. However, we have seen the same organizations come back and saying, the leaders saying, this is not working out. We want to come back to workforce. Because, finally, we cannot undermine the importance of social capital. I think we utilize the social capital that we had created before the pandemic to see through the first 6 months of the pandemic when we were doing video meetings and collaborations, online channels, because you already could bank on that social capital. However, there are many employees who have joined during the pandemic with this kind of a setup. They are struggling to build that social capital with their peers. And I think we have to realize that we are social animals. Yes, that flexibility should be available for us to work from home, and we should be equipped. But I don't think it will be a complete phenomena where we will all shift to work from home. You will see people, and I know in UK, in US, many people want to come back to workplaces for the same reason. So I guess that's it. But I think digital technology actually has empowered us to have the flexibility of choosing when we want to work from home and when we want to come to office and work. And I think that will remain as a benefit. And that change has been made possible. So I think, but there is a large section of people in India, for example, the nature of their job is such that they can never work from home. If they don't have work, they will sit idle. So I feel that when we talk about work from home, we also have to be sensitive to the point that this is not something which will be beneficial for or would be actually of use to anyone and everyone. So I think I wanted to set that context, Stuart, a little bit before we move on. Now I think I will come to the point on the cross-section of learning as well as how you can leverage digital tools for that, right? What we have seen is that what we expected in the world of learning in 2030, digital tools have actually fast forwarded forward to 2020, 2021. So the Ivy League colleges, which at one point of time were beyond the reach of many people, are now something that any youngster anywhere in the world in India can aspire to be part of. Suddenly we have seen digital tools democratizing the entire process of learning. Now it is not something which is accessible only to those who are prosperous, who come from rich families, or who have extraordinary level of scores maybe. And I think that is something which we all stand to benefit. And when we are seeing that explosion of learning that is happening, where you are seeing content very easily consumable, made available to you, and you do not take advantage of it, I think I call it professional suicide in the current context. That when learning is so easily available and it is made available to you in a modular manner, easily consumable manner, it's something which the shelf life is never ending of the learning. It is not that if you do not attend a lecture at a particular point, you have lost that opportunity. These are benefits we didn't have. And today that's made available to us. And I feel that it's a huge opportunity for today's youngsters to maximize on it and give a different trajectory to their career, which otherwise today is going to be increasingly dynamic, increasingly unpredictable as we move forward. So I don't know whether I answered your question, the second question, or not. But
no, I think you did. You brought up an interesting, very interesting point. A couple of them in the preamble to your question when you talked about the work from home issue and the fact that there are large swaths of the workforce who do jobs that cannot be done remotely. And these people are sometimes forgotten in these discussions of who is an essential worker and what can you do through digital means. But on the point of learning, you talk about shelf life, and one of the aspects of the shelf life of the courses is important because you can go back to digital courses at any time and sequence them the way you want to. But the flip side of that is the shelf life of skills is not as long as it was. So could you comment a little bit on that? I think you might be on mute.
I can you hear me? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, the shelf life. So could you comment on the shelf life of skills and why it's so important to keep refreshing and replenishing them?
Absolutely. I think even today, in today's time, I mean, some people are aspiring to become an engineer. Some people, again, I'm all of the aspirations that I'm talking about are typical aspirations in India. So people are aspiring to be an engineer, aspiring to be a doctor, aspiring to be a lecturer, scientist, and so on and so forth. And we are being groomed and coached since the very beginning that if you get yourself in a good college, good university, a good professional degree, that is enough for you to have a great life for the rest of whatever. That's true. That's not true. That is probably one of the biggest lies my parents have told me. It is not the end of the journey in terms of learning, because whatever I was taught in school might have been beneficial to land me my first job, but will not keep me in that job, and which will not take me further, which means that, and why? Because that's not relevant anymore, or it has done its job and the world is moving on, which means that the skills which were in demand yesterday could very well become redundant today. And if I do not want to be at the receiving end of that redundancy, I need to be able to keep learning the new skills at a very steady pace. And my pace of learning the new skills have to be much faster than what's happening in our environment. And hence, how about picking up and again, if I have a choice, if I have a beat, if I have a preference or a knack, then why don't I do deep research in those areas and keep myself updated across? So if I'm interested in technology, what is that area that probably there could be a future demand in skills? Like, for example, data security, cyber security are the new things. I could be a tech professional, but for me to have an edge, why don't I invest time in picking up these skill sets? I might be a great programmer once upon a time, but am I keeping myself abreast? And it's not just technology, because that's a common mistake as well most people do, where we feel that technology is one area where the demand for skill set is the most. For example, sales. The way we used to sell 10 years back, 5 years back, even 1 year back is changing today. Like now, salespeople are not able to step outside their homes, but they're still expected to meet their targets. They're still expected to do their numbers and meet customers. So have you invested in those digital skills for you to be able to sit at home and be able to maximize your leads? I think absolutely important, because what was relevant, what made you a star salesperson yesterday? If you keep doing the same thing, it's no more probably relevant, because the world has moved on. And hence, if you're not investing in adapting and picking up new skill sets, you will miss the bus.
Yeah. And also to your point, it's not just the specialty skills in one area that you need to have. It's becoming more and more important for people to be able to have the complementary skills. Sometimes those are other technical skills. Sometimes those are soft skills. We've had some discussions with our audience in past webinars about the importance of storytelling skills in marketing analytics. And you'd think that, yes, I understand why you want to tell stories as a marketer to customers, but you need to be able to take the data from your analytics and tell a story to your management about what is happening and what can you do about it. So, yeah, the importance of learning more about your field, but learning the complementary fields that build on a career base, very important. Um, what do you think these changes are doing to the structure of the workforce? You talked about social capital, talked about how do you manage employees when they're not in front of you, and whether or not that remains the situation. What have we learned and how will it change in terms of the way we build our teams, the way we manage our teams, and the kinds of jobs that are going to be available?
Sure. I think employment has morphed from a lifetime contract to a taxi cab relationship that is short and intimate. I think organization structures now look more like hourglasses or Eiffel Towers rather than pyramids. I mean, that's essentially what's going to happen. Staffing per se, and I'm talking about staffing from the aspect of how organizations are going to staff their organization. Staffing now is viewed as a number of concentric circles with a shrinking inner core of permanent employees. Organizational life expectancy and average employee tenure is declining. Companies are compelled to think about their cost structures. Companies would be inclined towards variable cost structures, which would directly impact the compensations and salary bills, moving more towards performance based and less fixed. Employees will surely aim to be more fluid, flexible, and agile by rethinking the effectiveness, productivity, and digitalization of their people supply chain. What is essentially going to happen, Stuart, is that, which I mentioned a little bit, is that there will be this, as against in the past, where organizations used to have this large base of permanent employees, and then they would have these outer layers of a lot of outsourced work in different capacities happening around the permanent employee base. What's going to happen, and the shock that many organizations have gone through during the pandemic, organizations would like to actually shrink that inner layer of permanent employees, and it would be a small, dot. And then you will see that there would be these bipartite contractual relationship, there would be these tripartite contractual relationship, which are temporary in nature. You will see a lot of apprenticeship being done by organizations. So that would be another layer outside. And then the ultimate and the final layer around it all would be those of freelancers and gig workers. So I think rather than having a two-layered approach, which most organizations have had in the past, organization will, just to become more resilient, invest in these 5-6 concentric layers around the core layer of permanent employee base and move ahead with that. And for employers to survive and sustain themselves, given the increasing uncertainty around us, this is essentially a win-win model, which actually creates opportunities for individuals, but also ensures that organization remains resilient. So I think this is how I look 2021 and going forward, how workplaces, workforce structures will emerge and change.
That is a good opportunity for us to ask a question of the audience, and I'd like to do this one. And it's basically a simple question, and I'll share the slide for the people in our streaming services. But this is, are you a gig worker? So the question here is yes, not now, but I have been, or no. And so we'll leave this open for just a few more seconds. It's a simple question, but it will give you a feel for who in the audience is or has been a gig worker. And let me share the poll result. It's interesting. In our audience today, about 1 in 7 people has been a gig worker, and or is a gig worker, I should say. 1 in 5 have been in the past, but the vast majority, 3/5 of the people, are not and have not been gig workers. And what you've been saying is, it's time for those people to start thinking about changing that in the future. Yes.
I think that you should have that weapon in your arsenal if you're going to take on the future. I think you should make yourself available, because while it is fluid, a work arrangement, but it also could end up being distinctly high paying if you're able to maximize your time and your productivity around some of these assignments. And these are assignment based. You enjoy the flexibility of being able to do when you choose to do it, but it also actually gives you an opportunity to maximize your earnings side by side. And in India, I don't think there is this mindset that it's only the Uber drivers and the Ola drivers and the Swiggy, these delivery boys are the ones who are only the gig workers. Yes, the vast majority, and by numbers, they outbeat probably all the other gig workers, but we do see an emerging trend in technology, in media, in marketing, where there is a lot of gig work opportunities and people are making themselves available. And I think it doesn't really, you always have an opportunity of opting out, but then you should make yourself available if you can.
Question, you mentioned the opportunity to maximize your earning potential. Would you like to ask the audience that question about their view of gig worker earnings, or would you like to just go ahead and discuss that?
Given that there is still probably a very few people who are in the audience who are engaged in gig work, I mean, I'll tell you, it's very simple. If I have a weekend, for example, which otherwise in a normal work, I'm off work, right? I am on, I have leaves, or these are designated leaves, but I do have time available, and we are sitting at home these days. We are not doing anything. So why can't we just decide that, okay, let me use 8 hours or 9 hours and pick up a gig assignment, which I will finish off in probably 2 days, 3 days, and maybe why just 2-3 days? I can say that I'll do it every weekend. So I guess it's about our change in our approach towards work. I mean, if you are somebody who's willing to invest that kind of time, that is, it's not that you have to. Somebody who is like a college goer. There's a lot of college kids today who would like to spend time. And I know a lot of college kids. They're brilliant in some of their media skills and digital skills. Just they make that choice that I am going to, along with my studies, give 3-4 hours a day where I will pick up a gig assignment. And this is essentially learning by doing also in some form. And it gives you exposure, it gives you experience, and it helps you make money. So why wouldn't you? And there are a lot of gig platforms now emerging for different kinds of job roles beyond the Ubers and the Olas. And hence, why should you not take a look at it and make your choice? You can always opt out. The best thing about gig work is that you're not bonded to it by any means. There are no notice periods. You can leave when you want to leave.
And your point about college students is well taken, because historically you'd learn by taking an unpaid internship someplace, and today you have the option of taking on micro work that pays and progressing through that way. The other point, I think, to build on what you said is, if you have a weekend that's free, and why not do something with it that's productive? If you're not, if you don't have your heart set on taking this weekend off to do nothing or to go somewhere else, which we're not allowed to do in a lot of places, but to build on what you said, one of the things that you can do with that is to devote. If you have a weekend that's free, which is another way to, why not do something with it that's productive? Look at that as if you gig work on yourself. You know, you're doing a temporary job to improve your future earning potentials.
Yeah, I completely. I mean, you use weekends, use after work, all the time that you're saving, not going out, having those dinners, I'm sure can be put to wise use right now.
I would like to ask one question of the audience, if I may. And this is what I'm going to ask. What is your career strategy? So let me open that and I'll display the choices for the people watching streaming. So if what's your ambition? Is it to progress at your current job? Is it to look for a new job in the same field that might give you more opportunity for growth or pay? Do you want to pivot to a new career? Do you want to become a freelancer, a gig worker? Do you want to become an entrepreneur? Because these are the kinds of things that people often tell us are part of their ambition. So I thought it would be interesting to ask and see who in the audience feels which direction is best for them. And you might be interested to see these results. What we see is that the most common answer is to seek a new job in the same field. And some people want to pivot to a new career, which is also an interesting thing, both of which are ambitions that require looking beyond your current skill set, being a bit more ambitious about what you can do and who might be interested in it. So can you comment on how that's going to play out for people in 2021 and beyond?
So I'm just summarizing the question that you want me to answer. Is that or rather, Stuart, just summarize what exactly you want me to respond to, because I can think of a lot of responses seeing the poll.
Yeah. So as we've been discussing, the restructuring of the workforce,
right?
Permanent employees becoming a smaller proportion of the workforce, and freelance and gig work becoming a bigger proportion. How does that trend affect the trajectory that these folks in the audience have said they'd like to follow with a new job, with a new career? How would you advise them to take action to play off of the new structure of the workforce and to prepare themselves for it?
So I'll try and attempt a response, or rather I'll try and share with you all about how you can make yourself successful in 2020 and beyond, in spite of all the uncertainties and in spite of and keeping in mind the aspirations that you might have. I think what we thought was our future is already at our doorstep. So a lot of trends regarding work that we have discovered during the pandemic, like remote work, online upskilling, on-demand work, have been institutionalized by the pandemic. So, I mean, aligning skills to the job requirement was always the criteria for being job ready and would always be. However, questions regarding which skills to prepare for are getting very difficult, as the shelf life of a particular skill, which we discussed a while back, is decreasing dramatically. So job seekers need to be prepared for a combination of soft skills like the ones shared earlier, which even Stuart probably mentioned briefly, swaddle towards digital capabilities. The debate these days is increasingly towards the importance of generous skills as against specialized skills, and this shall get amplified. So there is this new book called Range, written by David Epstein, which talks about this trend and further says, in a wicked world, relying upon a single skill is not only limiting, but it is disastrous as well. So just to conclude this point, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to some specific skill sets, attributes that you need to invest in, keeping aside your functional competencies. So if you have them in your respective functional, specializations, it will definitely help you remain successful and will also help you probably aspire a little more than where you are. I mean, whether you're looking for a better job in the same industry, whether you're looking for career break, whether you're looking to switch, will help you. And I must say that that one particular point that Stuart mentioned about storytelling, it is if you all develop this ability, it's life changing. And there is enough and more content out there which will help you sharpen and fine tune this skill. I meet a lot of people who are very high on IQ, but because of their this inability, they sometime after they grow for 4 or 5 years, they reach a plateau. They are not able to break through when into leadership roles because they have run out of their ability to actually be able to narrate, conceptualize, and be a brilliant storytellers. Because finally, you need to be a leader who's able to imagine and inspire. And hence, this is a skill set which is given the earlier you start, the better it is. But leaving that aside, I know it might sound very repetitive, but digital literacy is going to be very key. I still meet youngsters who do not give as much importance to this skill set as they should. Your ability to navigate through different kinds of tools, systems, can be able to differentiate between different digital mediums and be able to structure your thoughts, communications across each one of them, your behaviors across each one of them is very important. Learnability, I know it seems like a cliche, but if you do not come across as a lifelong learner, if you're not somebody who automatically exhibits that, yes, you're a learner profile, then you will get into trouble. And I know it is, just to share with you my own personal experience, yes, I used to be a prolific reader. And then there was a time in my career, especially I think when I third or fourth year of my getting into my corporate life, I always gave reasons of my busyness to not being able to read enough and not getting time and so on and so forth. So there was this dramatic slump and something that even my friends could not understand because I was known to be a prolific reader. And I did notice how that changed and how that impacted my career, how that actually limited my thoughts. And after that, I think I made some conscious effort just to share with you. Every day, I read 6 business newspapers by default, whether the paper gets delivered to my doorstep or not because of the pandemic. I will make sure that I go through all of them. Every day, there will be 1 hour that I keep aside where I will pick up a book and read. Everybody says there is 24 hours, so if everything else has to be done, well, these are things, please treat it as oxygen for yourself. So you need it every day for you to be able to survive and grow. Agility, ability to handle ambiguity. I think pandemic has shown us the importance of this skill set, that the people or the workplace employees who actually emerge as victors in being able to do that will always have attentions of their managers, of their leaders. And hence, and it's important for you to be in unpredictable and develop that. So you cannot get psyched. You have to develop that ability of solutioning through such situations. coding skills. I mean, coding is not just anymore for technology guys. All of us need to actually learn a little bit of coding, and coding has been made very easy. If you just go online there, I'm sure Simply Learn can also give you some tips on this, but there are enough and more freeware out there through which you can develop these skill sets. I mean, I know CHRO of one of the largest conglomerates heavy industry conglomerate in India. He actually at this age went and picked up Python and I was taken aback but he felt, I mean, even a person at that age felt that he needed to keep up and so that he can understand what's going on. And I think it's a life skill now. Fungibility. Many of you in the poll actually said that you would like to be able to make progress in the same company or same industry or the area of work. I think you should actually keep yourself absolutely liberated on that front. You should be developing skills which you should be able to use anywhere. So if today you're working for a printing, publishing company, tomorrow you should be able to work for an e-commerce company, because you never know which one is going to get affected because of what. So I have had enough employees, same time last year, who completely found themselves jobless. And while I was keen to put them in different job areas, but they were just not able to manage or think. So in a world where a job is better than no job, fungibility is a very important skill set. Flexibility, like your hours, the kind of job, roles, locations, you need to keep yourself extremely open about all of that. So if you invest in these areas and becomes your focus, whether there is a pandemic, whether there is no pandemic, I feel you will win and score.
Yeah, Rita, the one thing that I noted as you were going through those points is that so many of the things that will help people in the audience be successful in the coming year and beyond are not things that are tied to learning a particular skill or the way we think of a technical skill. It's learning how to be adaptable in a general sense. You talked about fungibility, being able to take your skill set and see how it can be applied in other industries. Flexibility of being able to fit into different roles, working hours and that type of thing. You talked about adaptability. You talked about learning to learn, or flexing the learning muscle and being seen as a lifelong learner. You talked about the feeding your brain through reading. None of these things are, you have to take a course in it. These are all things that are life skills that you can practice, certainly, and you can get advice on. But they're all available to all of us, is what I'm trying to say about that. And then, of course, there are the particular skill sets, and a number of the people in the audience. I think we can, if you have, if it's all right with you, we can move on to the questions and answers. So we have a number of people asking, specific questions about, what jobs are going to be popular in 2021 and that type of thing. And I think I know a little bit about, Ritu, about what you're going to say about that, but why don't you go ahead and say it?
Yeah, I think first to comment on what you mentioned, the reason I cannot and I shouldn't and I mustn't talk about specific skill set, which somebody can go and take a course on, simply because today they might seem relevant, tomorrow they may not, and I do not want to misguide you. So I think, but these skill set that I talked about, while they seem something that you can do sitting at home, it's like we all know that we need to be healthy and we should exercise every day, but we still don't do it. So, and if you need inspiration for that, sometimes that's why people get a trainer or they get somebody along with them to sit and exercise. Do draw your inspiration to get people to question you who can hold mirror in front of you in any of these areas if you can't do it alone. Because till it becomes a habit, if you need hand holding, go reach out to coaches, mentors who can actually be honest and be those mirrors for you. In terms of what are the jobs that are going to, I mean, I've been dealing with that question. I mean, I've done sessions exactly similar to this last year, the same time.
Right.
And I actually will give you an answer. I mean, again, I think it's an answer which will, this is essentially for me, a guidance, if I may say so, about how you should judge where you should go fishing, right? So I think it's very important for all of us to evaluate the financial prudence of the companies before we jump to any job role with any of them. As a pandemic actually has exposed companies which had or managed their cash, essentially it has differentiated organizations which have managed their cash well, and they were able to be more resilient as against the others. So there are, from my perspective, you need to be watching out for 5 kinds of organizations. And if you map those organizations, you'll know where you need to go. Cash flows. I mean, any organization which is burning cash at a very steady pace, please stay away from them in the current scenario. Net debt. Companies that have borrowed money relative to their earning are the worst affected during the pandemic. And again, you need to stay away. Cost structures. Companies that have more fixed cost in their cost structures will be more exposed during the pandemic. And hence, please look at how their costs are aligned. Like people who've got a lot of fixed cost and assets in their financials are going to run into rough weathers. Extremely people intensive or people dependent businesses have been hurt in many aspects. Discretionary items like lifestyle products, fancy items that are out there have been affected. So it's important for you to look for essential services companies like healthcare, banking, telecom, power. There is a more likelihood for you to be able to get some opportunity in these sectors in today's time as against discretionary services like lifestyle goods, hospitality, tourism, aviations. So this is one way you can construct how you would, where you should go fishing. But if you want me to tell you about industries where there is demand, of course, there is healthcare. I mean, you all know healthcare now needs doctors, nurses, paramedics, phlebologists, and the works. In pharma, they need R&D people, production staff, supply chain. FMCG companies, especially the stapled and processed foods, which are still, even when there is lockdown, they always remain in demand. Production, sales, distribution, logistic professionals, e-grocers, delivery agents, executives, supply chain, logistics professionals, e-commerce, similar delivery apps, similar profiles. Fintech companies, there is demand for a lot of technology professionals, cybersecurity professionals, data security. These are, India right now, the supply of some of these skill set is much lower than the demand in spite of the pandemic. Online education, digital workforce solution companies, digital marketeers, all of them continue to be in demand. And hence, maybe, I mean, I've just given you a huge bouquet. You can choose what you want to do.
So let me see if I can look at a few of these questions.
I'm reading a few questions. Do you want me to pick one, Stuart?
Yeah, go ahead while I go through a few of the others.
So there is a question. I'm an MBA first year student. Now I'm scared to get a job after the completion of MBA because of this pandemic. So what can I suggest? I mean, look, for me, unfortunately, this is all a bit of a deja vu because I have I have received similar questions last year as well, and hence for me this is all a deja vu. But I think my suggestion to you would be that please start networking with your alumnus and get yourself into all the professional networks which are available. Yes, should you have started 2 years back? Yes, but better now than later. You need to make a target list of organization, target job roles, and please make the target list not what your preconceived notions about the past was. Based on today's reality, which sectors are hiring, target the job roles, do deep research, not shallow research. And please have targeted reach out to stakeholders. Now, most of the decision makers or hiring managers are available on LinkedIn. Rather than making a generic reach out to them, please have a specific reach out and focus less on your resume and more on what value creation you can do for them. Honestly, people do not care about your degree, about what you did. People care about the role they have, the opportunity, and how you can create value. Also understand that pandemic has also created a lot of remote working opportunities. So do not worry about your base location and the job's location. If you think you're fit for that job, make a case for yourself so that you can, so that they can consider you, right? And the decision on whether you should move or not, it's something that you have to make based on how important your career job is to you at a later point. So just work on some of these, but meanwhile, I don't think you have time. I mean, consider it as sometimes a job is better than no job. If you're able to pick up a project, a short-term assignment, a gig assignment, an apprenticeship, internship, whatever be the color of the job, please pick it up right now. Right now, it's more important for you to keep yourself occupied and learn through the job. I mean, your career will not transform with just a year of your working. Please use your initial years of working to create the foundation of learning on which you build your future career on.
That's a great piece of advice, Ritu. I mean, the idea that in your first year of work, you're contributing to the company you're working for, but you're also building your reputation, your knowledge base, your skills base, your habits, and preparing yourself for an entire career to follow. We have a question from a YouTube audience. It's kind of a general question or open-ended question, but will automation impact the world? I mean, I think the real way to look at that is how will automation impact the world, and what do people need to know about that for when they're planning their careers out?
Automation will impact the world, and it has always impacted the world since the time mankind learned to innovate. So again, Indian audience may relate to this. I'm sure in a lot of Indian movies which were picturized, which were based on our historical past, you would see that there would be these specific people sitting in different households whose job was to manually operate a fan. There was this big fan, those like a mega version of those hand fans, and that was their job, by the way. That was it. The whole day they would do that. They even I don't know whether they got to sleep also at night, but that was their job. And then came the fan. Now, from that perspective, did the fan take away the job of that person who was sitting and doing that job? Of course it did. But, I think it's towards a better world, finally. There is a lot of work which is not dignified in nature, which is done manually today and gets passed on as work, as a job. I think human mind is capable, anything which is repetitive, anything which is standardized in nature, If technology tools and automations can do it better, then why not let them do it? While human minds and intelligence should be invested in innovation, in creating, in building relationship, because that's a skill set that can never become redundant. And hence, but yes, have we reached that world? No. But I can assure you, with every automation, we are creating different kinds of jobs. We do take away some jobs, but we create different kinds of jobs, and which compels all of us as a society to go up the skill curve, because that's how our aspirations of higher wages, better life can be met. So we need to create an ecosystem where automation and constant reskilling and skilling of the people coexist. And if your question is if automation is going to lead to lesser jobs, there is no empirical evidence to suggest so at all. It is definite, but I can give you empirical evidence it is going to create better quality jobs.
We have a similar kind of historical mythology in the United States of, the vast untamed land that was conquered by people who went out, cut down trees and made farms. And we still have this kind of national view of ourselves. But in fact, today, only about 2% of the people in the United States work in agriculture. And if you try to convince people of that fact, they'll say, no, we have to have much more farmers than that to feed ourselves. But the efficiency of farming and the fact that people don't have to spend all day in the fields anymore means that we now have all of the other skills, jobs, consumer goods, healthcare, and everything else that a modern society has. So automation, is not something necessarily to be afraid of. It's something that people have to adapt to.
You said something which actually gave me an ouch moment. So, and I do give this example many times, Stuart. 2% of your workforce is in agriculture in the United States. 62% of our workforce is in agriculture in India. Our food grain production is almost equivalent to yours. So what it means is all those people in the farms are not productive. They're just merely hanging out there. And that's what we need to change. You're understanding, like there are a lot of people in agriculture in India, but they are not productive. So they are actually, you don't need so many people in agriculture. But they are in agriculture. Why? Because we've not been able to create alternate job roles for them outside of agriculture, and agricultural innovation, has not happened. And that's not a good thing. I mean, these are unproductive people, and they are not earning also anything to talk about. So that actually is a good point that you raise, because I use it very often. 2% and 62% in India.
Yeah, but the trajectory hopefully will follow, and that's an astounding prospect of what that human capital will achieve when it's unshackled from having to do subsistence farming. We had a number of questions about data science, and a number of people are interested in entering the field, in moving into the field from other areas. One person in the construction industry is curious to know about the potential of data science jobs within construction, and whether, in general, is data science an area that you would recommend people go into, and what skills or prerequisites would they have to have? One person is asking because they feel they aren't good at programming, and yet they think data science is an appealing field. So is that something that they can achieve, or is that an unrealistic dream?
You do not have to be I might be overreaching my boundaries, but from whatever little I know, you do not have to be a programmer for you to pick up or get into data science. But yes, you need to be in love with numbers, because that's what you will see day in and day out. So I guess if you're somebody who do not get overwhelmed with numbers, is is somebody who intuitively likes spotting trends and patterns with numbers, you'll enjoy this. And I think it's now there are different courses and curriculums in data science, which doesn't take into consideration what your background is. So please at least give it a shot and try and pick this up. There is not one single industry, by the way, which will not make use of data science. Like my industry, ours is a people supply chain organization. I could do wonders if I make investments in data science. Similarly, whether it's real estate, construction, FMCG company, FMCD company, you name it, pharma, you can't, today data science is what? It's nothing but you're basically looking at data and trying to make intelligent predictions using it.
Yes.
You're trying to understand customer behavior, you're trying to understand buying patterns, you're trying to see impact of different correlated or unrelated aspects on your business. So it is definitely interesting, but it is something which the only prerequisite in my mind is you should like data. You should love the data and numbers.
And to your point about industries, Ritu, we've done a couple of recent webinars with founders of fintech firms. And some of the people in our audience have asked about fintech and how to get into it. It turns out that the topics of these webinars was the importance of artificial intelligence and machine learning in driving fintech. So the very nature of that industry is data science based. So we're at we're almost 10 o'clock or a little after 10 o'clock. So I think we're past our time. But I did want to thank you so much for this. We're going to do one last question of the audience before we say goodbye to you. And this is going to be a question regarding learning. Specifically, what kinds of things are you interested in the audience in learning, and when do you feel would be the best time to start? As somebody has said, today is always the best time to start something. But I'm putting up the poll question. I'll share it with the folks on the stream. And should be getting that. Here we go. There we are. And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And we will see what the results are. Data science and machine learning AI are two of the most popular topics for people to learn. Project management also, and cybersecurity are all the things that we mentioned today. And right away, this is by far the most popular answer to the question when you would like to start. And I think that's a good answer. So what I'd like to do now is Rita, thank you very much for sharing with us your thoughts and your expertise today. I'm going to let you say goodbye to the audience as I share. Oops, sorry. I'm going to share with the audience the contact information for you. Excuse me. Hit the wrong button there. And so, again, thank you to Ritu. Here's your LinkedIn information, probably just by Googling Rita Chakraborty, and you will reach the right LinkedIn entry. And again, you've been very generous with your time and your knowledge today, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
Thank you. Googling
Bye.
And we're going to thank our friends at Freshers World, and some of the people who, again, you've been very generous with your time and your knowledge today, so thank you so much. And
thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Rita runs.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
Portal for freshers in India. Thank you.
Bye.
So we're going to thank our friends at Freshers World. Take a look at Freshers World if you are, again, you've been very generous, looking for gig work and other jobs. Take a look at the other
everybody stay safe.
And I'd also like to mention
thanks so much, Stuart.
Portal for freshers in India.
Thank you.
Bye.
So here is we're going to the program that Simply Learn offers called Skill Up. It is a free program. It has a lot of our learning content, the self-directed video part, which we offer access to for free. Over 1,000 hours of video content and several hundred skills, including all the ones we talked about today and many more. And it's a good way to get started on your learning journey and see if this is right for you. So I've just added that again to the chat. We have the link to go to that page. We will be having our next webinar a little over a week from now, Thursday, May 13th. It will be an evening webinar in India, and habits of highly effective engineers. Basically a career management masterclass with Raghavendra Gandhati of Tesco. And he'll be sharing the ways in which a person in a technical job can be more effective. So we hope you'll join us then. Basically a career management masterclass, social channels, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we look forward to staying in touch with you and having you at future Simply Learn webinars. So thank you very much. So we hope you'll join us then. Basically a career management masterclass, social channels, Facebook, Twitter,